Welcome to OOO, an out of ordinary podcast where we dig deep into case studies and the nitty gritty of Web3 marketing. You'll find here all the amazing people that are building Web3, so stick to us as we address their marketing secrets and learn how to build amazing products and brands. Hello everyone, I'm Alex, your fellow Web3 marketer and the host of an Out of Ordinary podcast. This is episode 46 and I have some super exciting news. If you're new here, welcome. My goal is to make this podcast your go-to place when it comes to answering anything Web3 marketing related. As always, I want to let you know that you can now support the show both on Patreon and Unisub with donations in fiat or crypto. You can donate as little as $5 a month and still have a huge impact. Another super cool thing is that I've partnered up with Pause.media, an on-chain podcast minting platform. So what does this mean for you? Starting this episode, you can now mint the episodes and become a collector of this one and of others as well with your favorite speakers or subjects. Follow me on LinkedIn or Twitter for more info on how this works and check out the link in the description of this episode. And if you can't do any of the above, that's totally fine. Send this episode to a friend, leave a 5-star review, or post about it on social media. Every action matters. Now, let me introduce you to my guest. Amanda Cassatt is the founder and CEO of Serotonin. Amanda previously served as Chief Marketing Officer of ConsenSys from 2016 to 2019. Joining 1 year after the launch of Ethereum, Amanda played a crucial role in defining, creating, and growing the narrative for ConsenSys, Ethereum, and the blockchain overall. Amanda stewarded the ConsenSys brand through its global expansion across enterprises, governments, developers, and consumers. She created and scaled the marketing team to over 50 people, serving both the ConsenSys brand and 50-plus portfolio companies such as MetaMask, Infura, Truffle, and Gitcoin. Amanda's contribution to some of the most successful product launches, token sales, and fundraisers landed her on Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2016. Amanda is the author of the world's first Web3 marketing book, Web3 Marketing, a Handbook of the Next Internet Revolution. Hi, Amanda. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for being on the pod. I've been trying to schedule a call with you for a while, so I'm very, very excited we finally made it. One of the first questions I want to ask you, and it's something that I'm asking all my speakers, if you can tell the audience a bit about yourself and how you got into Web3. I know maybe many of you have stumbled upon your name at least before or have heard of Serotonin, but I thought we should probably do a small intro.
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast.
Of course.
I started in media and marketing. My first job out of college was actually working for Arianna Huffington at HuffPost. And I learned a lot there about how content creation works and gets monetized online. And I became concerned pretty quickly that it would be difficult for online creators to monetize their work. I left HuffPost and started a company called Slant. What we wanted to do was help creators get paid for their work online. And so we offered our creators a 70% revenue share on the income from the ads that we served across their work. And we helped them learn how to market their content on social. We ended up having a micropayment-based business model because we'd find ourselves splitting the cent in order to pay out to our creators sometimes. And that's when I got really interested in payments because our business model that worked in theory didn't actually work in practice because of the amount of our margins we were paying out to these processors. And so I started going to meetups and events, meeting other founders where I lived in New York that were focused on the payments issue online. And I stumbled into one of the first ever Ethereum meetups in New York and just got my mind blown. I realized I was going to need to drop everything and join the circus. I realized really quickly that these were some of the smartest people I'd ever met, and they were all getting excited about this set of ideas that I realized wouldn't just transform my industry or solve my startup's problem, but would potentially create a new foundational layer for how value works in a digital context. And so as Ethereum was spinning up and as ConsenSys was starting, I became the chief marketing officer at ConsenSys early on and served there from 2016 2016 through 2019, which enabled me to build the first Web3 marketing team, create a lot of the best practices around that, bring Ethereum to market, along with ConsenSys and its projects like MetaMask, Infura, Truffle, Gitcoin, and a whole other host of ones that did or didn't work. We learned a lot. After about 4 years, I left and started Serotonin, which is now the largest Web3 native marketing agency and product studio, with a lot of my original team. Some of us have been working together now for over 7 years, which is basically a century in crypto. And now we work with a lot of the leading projects, both in Web3 and also Web2 companies getting into Web3, the PayPals and Robinhoods and Sotheby's of the world.
I think like right now, I'm seeing a lot of interest in like getting creators or like helping creators monetize. So like now you were interested in that, and I feel like right now I'm super interested in that because of course like I'm also like a pretty I'm a content creator myself, so this is definitely something that I'm looking into quite a lot lately. Something else I wanted to ask you, as you kind of told us a bit about your story. You've been the CMO at ConsenSys. Can you walk us through some of the strategies that you've used and maybe the biggest lessons that you've employed there?
Sure. So Web2 marketing and Web3 marketing are fundamentally really different. When I was first hiring people onto the ConsenSys marketing team, most people with marketing job descriptions had gotten this kind of calcified skill set. They were mostly running paid ad budgets across platforms like the various Meta business suites, then Facebook, Google Ads, etc. But it didn't make sense when you can't calculate the actual ROI of a developer learning Solidity to employ the same marketing tactics as some kind of Web2 product. It was kind of a joke to even think about it that way. And also at the time, those platforms had banned any kind of crypto keywords. So you actually couldn't have an ad in Google or Facebook that had the word crypto, blockchain, Ethereum, Bitcoin in it. And so we simply weren't able to, and it didn't make sense to, use the typical strategies from Web2 software marketing. And so what we learned was we need to go back to the growth hacker roots of marketing, get back to the core marketing protocol of know your product, know your audience, figure out the key messages that resonate with that audience, distribute them across the channels that those audiences pay attention to, create a marketing funnel where you're creating catalysts for engagement, discovery, engagement, use, retention, measuring conversion at each stage, rinsing and repeating. And so we went back to those roots, and we learned that in this kind of decentralized context, you can't have this centralized comms team that controls all of the messaging. Everyone across the Ethereum ecosystem is going to push out their own messages, and they're excited to because they have skin in the game. And so top-down comm strategies just don't work. And so we built a different mental model around facilitation, looking around and seeing what the community was starting to form around Ethereum, starting to see what they're doing naturally. Looking around for those sparks and blowing oxygen toward those sparks and seeing ourselves as the facilitators rather than the only ones that had to come up with good ideas. So just one tangible example, one thing we noticed was that Ethereum meetups were springing up all over the world. And that wasn't just in San Francisco and New York and Hong Kong. It was also in Bucharest. It was also in Sao Paulo. It was all over. And we could have hired 1 million people to run every meetup. But instead, what we did is we organized the organizers. We helped all of the people that were self-identifying to become Ethereum meetup organizers. We organized them into a channel. We helped them get standard decks and templates, so they were all singing from the same hymnal. We helped them get resources. We created a roving content series of new dApps and applications to go and talk to these various meetup groups to try to get users and feedback. And so what we did is we looked around, we saw what people were doing naturally, and we blew oxygen toward that thing rather than assuming we had to do everything ourselves. And we've seen that kind of approach work really well across decentralized ecosystems.
Something you mentioned there and kind of caught my attention. I feel like it's still a very, very, very big debate between like me and my friends, me and my Twitter friends, LinkedIn, other speakers on my pod. Even yesterday, I had a recording, and it was exactly the same debate. Do you still feel like Web2 and Web3 marketing is very different?
So here's what it comes down to. If you're able to calculate lifetime customer value and customer acquisition cost, then you can employ Web2 style marketing strategies. And some Web3 products are at the stage of maturity where you can back into those numbers and calculate ROI enough to do some standard kind of marketing practices like deploy paid marketing budgets. And there are starting to be really great tools. We use Addressable and Spindle. We're doing analytics on that kind of spend that crosses both Web 2 and Web 3. So you can kind of map how on chain activities look mapped both onto in a Web 3 context and a Web 2 context and do attribution between them. So yes, as some of those products reach more maturity, some of those tactics still work. But some of the tactics that work best are actually very Web3 native type tactics like rewards programs, like quests. And so there's a whole host of Web3 native projects like Galaxy, for example, which is one of our clients at Serotonin, that create incentives to bring in really high quality community members into some of these more technical communities. So it's a blend and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't think I've ever heard anybody resume it this way, but like as you're saying it, I think it does make sense. And I am very excited to see a lot more products come to market and like develop and mature to kind of have a bit more to have the situation a bit more mature and more stable, let's say, because I feel like that's what we've been missing in the last couple of years, months. But kind of moving forward to you and Serotonin, you've been running it for a couple of years. What inspired you to do the transition from like a normal company, even in Web3, to owning an agency? Because I know for sure it's not an easy job. And what kind of companies do you guys work with?
Yeah, so after about 4 years at ConsenSys, where my mission was really to bring Ethereum and the ecosystem to market, I felt like Ethereum was across the line. And a lot of people would disagree and say that Ethereum is only at the very beginning of its journey, and I think that's right. But I felt that it was well positioned enough that my job was done as kind of a 0 to 1 gal. And so I wanted to bring the best practices that my teammates and I had developed to the next generation of L1s, L2s, DAOs, DeFi, NFTs, and also projects coming across from Web 2 to Web 3 and expand our remit and expand our impact beyond just the ConsenSys ecosystem. So that was the motivating factor. We just had a lot more to give in a more expansive way. And you can check out our client list at serotonin.co. We've worked with a lot of the leaders in those categories, a lot of the leaders in the L2 space, also some of the big names coming across from Web 2, some major fintech players like PayPal, like Robinhood, a major player in the arts world, Sotheby's, also Pace Gallery. We are really good at helping those companies come into Web3 in a Web3 native way that's augmentative to the existing crypto ecosystem. And so we have both practices. We balance Web3 native projects. We can get very technical into DeFi with some of these big Web2 players.
Fair. I've seen a lot of companies kind of going this route, and I think it's a very good way to go. Something else I wanted to ask you, and it's actually a question that we got from the audience, and it was regarding scaling a marketing team. You already have a pretty big team right now. What strategies did you employ to build and manage such a diverse team serving both ConsenSys and its portfolio companies?
So when I was CMO of ConsenSys, I did not want to hire a full-time 80-person marketing team, but that's what I ended up doing. And the reason I ended up doing that was because at the time I was unable to find an agency partner that was knowledgeable enough about Web3 to really support us. And it didn't make sense to invest all that effort in educating an external agency about Web3. At the time, it was such an effort to get up to speed that it basically made sense to hire that person if you'd invested in training them. And so the lack of an appropriate agency partner was the reason we did it that way at ConsenSys, and it worked extraordinarily well. We ended up creating this narrative engine across every channel that got the word out about Ethereum, that was able to target audiences like our core audience of developers, but also the mainstream business press. It captured the global imagination, and we were really able to tell that story well across all channels. Today, I think a mature marketing team is a blend of in-house resources and agency partners. At the beginning of a startup's journey, it's really important that there be an internal stakeholder that's super knowledgeable about the product. That title can be CEO, it can be COO, it can be head of marketing, CMO, marketing director, whatever you want to call it. That person needs to be a Swiss Army knife that basically understands each of the major marketing channels enough at least to oversee some blend of internal and external resources delivering against OKRs. But you don't actually need to hire more in-house functions than you have continuous work for. And you can really use an agency for intermittent functions like PR. You don't necessarily have a press release every day, for example, but you might want to have someone internal handling things that are happening every single day. And so as you grow and as more of your different marketing functions become continuous as opposed to intermittent, you might consider hiring another person in order to staff that function and continuing to use an agency to extend the capabilities of the team and also to come in on things like brand and strategy. It often becomes difficult for a team that's been working together for a number of years to imagine, let's say, a rebrand, to refresh your core messaging. You've just been thinking about it for so long that it often makes sense to have external eyes.
I don't know how it was in your circle, but in my circle, at least on Twitter, I feel like agencies and marketers have been receiving a lot of hate lately. This wasn't actually a question that I prepared, but like it came to my mind right now because I really want to know your opinion about it. And like many times I went to the Twitter spaces or like discussions about like Web3 marketing. A lot of people were telling me like, oh, I paid this agency. It was like really bad. There were really bad results, or I had no idea what they were talking about, obviously, because many agencies like hire people with like Web2 experience who had no idea how to approach anything Web3 related, or had any sort of knowledge. And marketing hasn't been like on the top of many companies, especially in this bear market, let's say. What kind of skills do you think, or like what do you think you should pay attention to when like either getting an agency to work with or like hiring somebody in-house?
So I think the amount of technical overhead to work on certain kinds of Web3 projects is so high that you cannot just go ahead and hire some random agency or some random like marketing consultant that isn't knowledgeable about Web3, depending on what your project is and who your audience is. And that's why Serotonin works so well. We've concentrated that knowledge base in one company, and we have that to offer to our clients. And often we get projects where folks have attempted to work with other traditional style agencies and just found it's too much knowledge overhead to get them spun up on Web3. And now we're learning a lot also about AI and the convergence between AI and Web3. We're learning a lot about DeSci and biotech and the convergence between science and longevity and Web3. And so what we do that really sets us apart is train our team on the technology and the science really intimately so that we're able to actually speak to these audiences. The bad outcome you want to avoid when you are marketing to any kind of technical audience is your technical team describes your product, then that description gets diluted by some marketer that doesn't understand it, and then it gets pushed back out to an audience that does understand it, worse than when it came in from your original CTO or head of technology. And so that's what we avoid, and we keep our skills really sharp on the team with continuous retraining in order to be really able to serve our clients. And even a less technical project requires this skill set. So I think about, why did Sotheby's choose us? Why did PayPal choose us? Well, Sotheby's, they're selling digital art, but the CEO also needs to get on an interview and explain why he chose this blockchain or that blockchain. So and that needs to be an informed opinion. And a PR firm that doesn't understand the crypto audience and the crypto industry isn't going to be able to brief that CEO on explaining his decision. And so that's really our differentiated value prop that others are going to continue to struggle to compete with.
And for example, when it comes to like hiring in-house marketers, like what do you think any founder should be paying attention to?
Yeah, so I think the first marketer you hire needs to be a Swiss Army knife. They need to be able to understand the major marketing channels. So PR, earned media, owned media, so content and social, events, and they need to understand paid growth and how to deploy a budget and measure ROI, measure things like lifetime customer value, customer acquisition cost. They need to be dangerous at all of those things enough to at least supervise internal and external teammates working toward OKRs. And that person doesn't necessarily need a marketing title, but they need to have that set of capabilities. And you don't need to hire tons of marketers, but you need to have a flight control manager overseeing those functions so that they all get done.
I'll make sure that I'll snippet that and like post it everywhere because I feel like everybody needs to hear that. I do have a lot of stories, but probably that's a discussion for some other time. Something else I wanted to ask you because I feel like we're getting deeper in our conversation. Like, what are some of the biggest opportunities in Web3 right now for growth and for marketing and marketers at the same time?
So I think Web3 is really a substrate for building incentive alignment engines. Chris Dixon describes it a lot in terms of skin in the game. When people have economic or intrinsic or extrinsic alignments with a project, they're going to be its most powerful advocates. They're going to be much more engaged. They're going to be inherently motivated to help the project grow. And that's actually a more scalable engine for growth than simply the arbitrage that you're running on these paid platforms between CAC and LTV. And so it's a super efficient way to grow. It's a new skill set. So you need to understand how to design an incentive system and how to plug people into an incentive system, solving that 0 to 1 problem so people discover it and get enmeshed in it so that it can actually grow over time. And I think those kinds of incentive systems, you look at things like Blast and Blur, they're getting more and more gamified and they're getting more and more English language. So we're starting to see more gamified wrappers around activities that are basically yield farming, that are basically DeFi activities, but that are more accessible to a generalist because you no longer need to code to participate in those kinds of activities. So looking at incentives is that opportunity for growth and really what sets the Web3 toolset apart.
What are some go-to-market strategies that you think will still work in 2024?
So this is a really low-hanging fruit thing that we advise all of our companies to do. We have all of our clients make what we call an aligned parties list. And that can be a list of investors, teammates, friends, business partners that all have some kind of following on some kind of social network where the target audience of that project lives. And getting those people organized to amplify the messages of that project that they're in some way already incentivized to help grow. And you are leaving access to distribution on the table as a project if you don't get organized about enabling those people to amplify your messages. And we find this all the time that projects come in without doing that, and they expect to reach a wide audience. They expect to pay influencers maybe to carry their message without even organizing things in their own backyard and spinning up the people that already have a built-in motivation to do so. So that's a really low-hanging fruit, and that's always going to work. And we think a lot about access to distribution, the cost of access to distribution, and how to do that really efficiently. And so we call this organic influencer marketing.
I think this is actually a mistake that like a lot of companies in Web2 make as well. So I'm not just seeing that in Web3. I don't know. It's a startup mentality. I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel like it's very similar to what I've experienced before as well.
Yeah, we really see a model of like early stage marketing is really probing for product market fit. And that probe gets fed back into product development. And we often find projects want to reach someone that they've never met before they've even talked to the people that are closest to them. So we really have a concentric circles model of probing for product market fit. You want to reach out to the early evangelists that are in your target audience that you know, validate your product, validate your message with them, refine it, and then go out one concentric circle wider to a wider audience. And if you don't convince 1,000 people to love the thing you're building, you're not going to convince 1,000,000 people. And a lot of people are really impatient and want to get to going mainstream overnight, but that's never going to happen unless you have those first 1,000 passionate, obsessive fans that probably come from the community of people you already know.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like it's been a lot of pressure kind of to build like the first community and so on. So I feel like many times like all the things that you're mentioning right now, which are like the healthy way to grow, I think have been overseen. And I'm probably like, that's why like many times like you find yourself like growing, but it's not very sustainable and you're asking yourself why. So at least that's my opinion.
In crypto, you want to pay attention to companies that have made it through multiple market cycles. When you're in a bull market, our industry is so timing based. When you're in a bull market, you get a lot of projects growing really fast that are going to crash in the next bear market. But projects and communities that have weathered multiple cycles, those are the ones that actually have the early signs of product market fit.
What do you think are the most crucial elements for a successful marketing campaign in Web3?
Gosh, I really think it's the same protocol as Web 2. It's know your product, know your audience, identify the audience channels where those people live, push that message out over those channels, build a funnel, map out how people are discovering your product, how you're converting them to engage with it, how you're converting them to use it, how you're retaining them, whether you have some kind of referral program to send people back to the top of the funnel. Measure out all of those things, figure out what the catalysts are, keep on measuring to see which of those catalysts are broken, keep tweaking things, keep improving things so that that funnel is moving energy through it. I think that's true in Web 2, and it's also true in Web 3. If you're thinking about a general protocol that works regardless of what your product is, regardless of what your target audience is, that's the marketing protocol.
In a recent interview, you mentioned the importance of understanding the why behind the Web3 projects, which I think is super, super important. How can marketers effectively convey the purpose and vision of a Web3 project to diverse audiences in order to build that initial community, especially because we were talking about it before?
I would start with the truth. Ask yourself, why am I working on this project? Why do I care about this? Ask the founder and CEO, why did you build this? Why do you care about it? There's probably some larger mission that project is built to serve that has values. Maybe those values are individual resilience, self-custody. Maybe it's being able to curate creators and elevate creators. There's some kind of mission and values behind every high quality project. And frankly, if there isn't any kind of mission or any kind of purpose, what are you doing? Maybe it's to accelerate adoption of technologies that are going to make the world better. Whatever it is, maybe it's financial inclusion, maybe it's accessibility. Whatever that thing is, figure out what it is and foreground that. Communities come together over shared values, and you want to project those values. That's one thing that went really well with Ethereum and with a lot of the projects we work on. We think, okay, what are the values here? And that creates an efficiency because people want to support values that they care about, and people are willing to vocalize and add a project to their identity if it's something that they connect with in that way.
Something else I wanted to ask you, because like to kind of stay in this to kind of stay connected to the community building side of things. What's your advice that you would give to somebody that is just starting to build a community, and what about like somebody who wants to grow their community? And maybe if you do also have some examples that you want to share, that'd be awesome.
Sure. So you want to attract people into your early community that are a really good fit for who you want in there. Because as your community grows, you're going to lose control over the vibe. And if you just have a very extrinsic rewards program, and you're just bringing people in for some kind of lightweight reward that don't care about your project, that aren't trying to contribute, We call those moon boys, by the way. When token, when moon is what they always say on channels. If your channels are full of moon boys, it's going to be off-putting later on to the kinds of community members, real contributors, people that are really interested in building with you. It's going to be off-putting to those people. And so while you have control in those early stages, you want to do things that don't scale and have individual conversations with early evangelists and people in your network that are really the kinds of community members you want. You invite those people in, you learn from them what it would take for you to be building, for them to want to get involved. You have conversations with them about how they want to contribute. And you in that really non-scalable way, in that really interpersonal one-on-one way, you bring those first people in and you foster that early community around your values, around your product, around the kinds of things that you actually want. We sometimes think of community like a spaceship. Like imagine a spaceship comes in from outer space. They put down a ladder somewhere on Earth. Some number of humans walks onto the spaceship. Then they retract the ladder and it flies away. And those are the humans that they're going to have for the next 1,000 years as they colonize a new planet. Those are the people you're stuck with, the people in your early community. And so you want to be really selective and thoughtful about who they are, because that's going to drive the entire nature of your community as it grows. A funny example is, so I wrote a book that came out last year called Web3 Marketing. It was one of the first, possibly the first Web3 business books from a major publisher. It was published by Wiley. And on the first page of the book is an individual claim code. This is just in the first edition that you could use to go to a website and claim an NFT that would give you membership to a Web3 marketing token gated community on Telegram. And so what we were actually doing is using the friction of Web3 to curate a community of only people that were really interested, because it takes some doing to go through those steps. Although obviously we optimize the UX for ease of use, but it takes some friction to go through those steps. So we really only got people in the door that really care and that really want to be part of a professional community of Web3 marketers. And so we started with those really passionate people, using Web3 as a vetting mechanism to be able to identify them and organize them. And it's become a really fantastic, fruitful community that's not much larger.
Something else I wanted to ask you is regarding like personal branding, because you're doing quite a lot of it. And something I wanted to know is like, how do you think that influenced the growth of Serotonin and basically your trust in the space? Like you already had like a pretty solid background, let's say. So people kind of could have connected you quite easily to a pretty big company in the space. But what about Serotonin? Do you think like your personal brand helped it in any way?
So at Serotonin, we're on a mission to accelerate the adoption of Web3 and other breakthrough technologies that we think are increasing human resilience, flourishing, agency. And as part of that mission, we want to share our best practices about how to do those things with others. And so that drives a lot of our public-facing content creation. It's the reason we share a lot of our strategies broadly. We really believe in some of these fast-growing ecosystems. The rising tide lifts all boats. And so if others use our strategies and that ends up growing the pie, we're delighted. And so we're always just happy to project that information, open source that information, rather than keeping it to ourselves. And so that's been our philosophy in terms of public-facing content.
Something else I wanted to ask you was regarding the book that you wrote. So you're the author of the world's first Web3 marketing book, as you said as well. Web3 Marketing, a handbook for the next internet revolution. I wanted to ask, like, what inspired you to write it, and what do you think are like the top 5 lessons you think readers should learn from this book?
Well, it was actually kind of a funny story. So I'd been working on the same thing for 7 years. I've been thinking about the same thing over and over for 7 years. Pattern matching, seen a lot of examples. We've probably brought more Web3 projects to market than any other entity or group of individuals on Earth. And there's not a lot of competition for that title. And an editor from Wiley actually reached out to me a year and a half ago and said, we're going to acquire a book on Web3 marketing. We came to you first, but if you don't want to write it, we'll go to someone else. And so I thought, this is the niche that my teammates and I have been carving out. And if I don't write this book, it's going to go to somebody else. And so I said, I'm going to write the book. And I took 10 days off work. I wrote from dawn till dusk, basically, and got the first draft done, then went through multiple cycles of review, adding citations, adding more data and charts, etc. And we were able to get the book out within a year. It's actually a really fast publication process because I wanted it to be available before the next bull cycle kicked in so that more people would have access to it. So that was really my motivation. I'd always kind of wanted to, but I got a kick in the pants from an external force that pushed me over the edge.
I love this, and I think there's so much need for marketers in the space to learn, especially right now that we're entering a new bull market. And I think a lot more roles are going to be open, and a lot of people will want to transition finally to Web3. If maybe they didn't have the courage to do it like in this bear market, but right now they will finally be able to do it. So I do believe that they need all this. All this help or any kind of help that they can, and it's actually one of my main issues, not issues, mission with this podcast as well, to try to educate and help as many marketers understand the space as better as possible, at least with everybody that's getting on the pod.
Yeah, so my philosophy with the book is what got us here won't get us there. We have only so many people working in this new industry. Statistically, what are the chances that we're the very best people at what we do? Probably the best people at what we do are still out there working on other things. How we're going to grow this movement is by helping those people get educated and informed so they can start working with us. So I was thinking, how do I make this book evergreen? How do I make sure it's relevant over a long period of time? And the mission with the book is really to arm marketers that want to get into the space with the information that they need that's going to be evergreen and appropriate whenever they start getting into Web3 and crypto. It starts with the history of Bitcoin, how Bitcoin evolved into Ethereum, how Ethereum evolved into Web3, and then goes through what the actual tools are in Web3 with the goal of putting tools in the marketer's toolkit so that they can actually use them. And that was how I made the book evergreen. I didn't focus too much on, do exactly this tactic, do exactly the strategy. There are a lot of case studies in the final third of the book. But what I really wanted to do is create a non-technical guide that would arm the kinds of people coming in with the information they need. And the idea is what got us here won't get us there. There are so few marketing, storytelling minds in this space compared to all of the experts out there. What are the chances that we actually already have the very best people? Probably the best people at this are still out there doing other things. And so we want to invite those people into our movement, and that's going to be how it grows.
Yeah, I do agree with you. So one of the last things I want to ask you is that I got quite a lot of questions from the audience, and I wanted to kind of pile them, and I'm gonna read through them. So in case some of them seem a bit complicated and long, but let's try to see how we can answer that together. So the first question, there are actually three that I pulled out, and I felt like they were the most important. The number one is somebody asked three reasons why the companies you worked with and onboarded to Web 2.5 and Web 3 blockchain tech decided to do so. So I'm guessing they're asking why did they decide to work with you? While many companies hesitate, I'm curious to learn why some are willing to embrace the latest opportunities and do well. So probably why they want to do the transition from Web 2 to Web 2.5 or 3.
Sure. So why work with us if you want to get into Web3? We're Web3 natives. We understand the technology really well. We understand the audiences within this ecosystem and what they're going to respond well to. It takes a really long time to build that knowledge base and to build that set of connections and that kind of native knowledge of how it works. And so I think that's why we are the favorite for getting into Web3 for Web2 companies that are considering the space. If you pick a random marketer or pick a random agency, they're probably not going to understand how this works. They're probably not going to be that well versed in the technology. And we've really concentrated that knowledge and those best practices over time, which we help build. And so that's really our competitive advantage, and also what we can contribute to others, right? What we can help teach others about that are curious about getting really good at Web3 marketing. And then in terms of why an existing company would get into Web3, well, each one of them has their own incentives. It's kind of like asking, why did companies choose to go online? Maybe they want to reach the kinds of audiences that are in Web3. Maybe they want to bring their CRM on chain and enable payments or enable creating a community in an on-chain context because they think that's the future of understanding your audience and being able to retarget them properly, creating rewards, loyalty, or membership programs. So each company really has their own strategy and their own incentive system depending on what they are and what they do.
Okay. The second question is, I'd be curious to hear about the latest marketing trends that naturally involve the community and that are also sustainable from a business point of view. For example, how to be community inclusive, spur conversions to sales, ultimately lead to holistic growth, especially for Web 2.5, just to use another of your coined terminologies, let's say, businesses that may or may not have tokens to offer, or how you foresee Web3 marketing evolve more broadly over the coming years, ideally things we might not expect.
Sure. So building a skin in the game, intrinsically and or extrinsically aligned community isn't some cosmetic touch to add to your traditional Web2 company. You aren't going to gather a bunch of people and treat them like normal consumers and expect them to behave in the positive ways that we see in Web3, like extra engagement, like being willing to do work for you, like being willing to refer their friends. You need to make sure those people can actually own something or be involved in something, participate in the decision making, make it their own. And so if you're not open to doing that, or if you aren't planning to have a long-term team staffing and contributing to that Web3 community, then maybe you're not ready. And one thing we do with these projects is help them enter Web3 the Web3 way. And that means really being engaged with those people, having a long-term plan for how you're going to grow that product in your community. Short-term cash grabs may work for a moment, but it actually is harmful to your brand if that's what you're trying to do. We also always think, how is what you're bringing into Web3 augmentative, growing, strengthening to the existing Web3 community? How are you bringing value from what you're successful at in Web2 into Web3? And if you look at something like Sotheby's, they're bringing their curatorial sensibilities and their artists and their book of buyers, right? You look at something like PayPal, they're endorsing Web3 by issuing a stable coin. They're saying, we believe the future of payments is going to be on chain. These are all really important augmentative additions to what we're doing in Web3.
And do you think, what are some trends that you think we should expect but not expect at the same time?
So one of the big trends is institutional adoption of crypto. We just saw the ETF approval, and that's going to bring in lots of other financial institutions applying for ETFs. I think we're going to get Ethereum ETFs. We're going to get various baskets of tokens that are, represented by these financial firms that people can buy into. So I think we're going to get a lot of institutional capital in this cycle. And it's a gateway drug. A lot of those buyers are going to learn about Web3 and start experimenting with DeFi and other tools. So we're going to see a new wave of people come in through a new avenue. Some other things I'm excited about, the intersection between crypto and AI is super fascinating. So imagine a future where most transactions are on chain and done by AIs on behalf of people. And AIs are the ones interacting with the blockchain's UX and then wrapping it up in a neat little bow and presenting their work transparently to the people that are instructing them. I think that's going to be how things go. Then also imagine a future where AI code audits are able to ensure the security of DeFi protocols. So then there's really no greater risk to using DeFi over centralized finance when there's not so much risk of hacks and errors with some of these new protocols. And then imagine a world where you can fully track attributions and the provenance of content. In this world where AI is generating so much content, you can verify that at least someone says on chain that this is real, or that I own it, or I created it. And then imagine open source, right? Like imagine all of these projects that are incentivizing individuals to pool together resources like compute, that are pooling together data into open source AI and getting rewarded on chain for their contributions. It's a great way to, there's a big movement of open source LLMs and the ability to reward creators on chain for their contributions to those LLMs. And so these convergences are happening, and I think that's going to be a big narrative this cycle.
One of the last questions we got from the audience is they said this, they'll be doing a bunch of loyalty programs, but I wonder what other things you're doing to bridge Web 2 to Web 2.5 and 3.
It depends on the project so much, right? So it depends on the company, depends on the project, who they're trying to target, what kinds of things they want to sell. One really easy, low-hanging fruit thing for Web2 companies to do is membership rewards and loyalty. So trying to build up your history of on-chain interactions, trying to move those things over to the blockchain. The blockchain is the best CRM known to humans. What we've really been doing this whole time with the Facebook and Meta business suites is trying to extrapolate buying behavior from identity. But when you look on chain, you can just see buying behavior without having to deal with identity. So that's great for GDPR. And you can see exactly who's buying what, how people are transacting, whether people are holding, whether people are selling, and you can target people exactly where they already live. So once you build up that on-chain community, you build up that history of transactions, that enables you to reward people. It enables you to gather data and learn about the people that are buying your product. So I would just try to move all those things as quickly as you can and start building that on-chain history of transactions and community.
Thank you so much. One of the last questions of this episode is, can you give me an example of a tool, resource, newsletter, book, or anything that marketers might find useful, or anybody listening to this podcast, like as a resource?
Well, I'm obviously biased. I think I wrote the book Web3 Marketing, so I would definitely direct people there, and then to claim the NFT and join the Web3 Marketing professional community. It's a really great channel.
What are you most excited about in 2024, and what do you wish for 2024?
I think there's going to be a lot of energy coming into the space. I'm excited about the institutional narrative with some of the big finance firms adopting crypto. I think there's some really exciting, genuine technology innovation in the field of ZK and privacy, and also in the adjacent fields of AI and crypto convergence and AI longevity and DeSci kind of convergence. So I'm watching that and I'm really excited about it. Real world assets on chain, membership rewards, loyalty programs from big brands coming on chain. Super excited about all those things this year.
A bunch of stuff probably will be happening until the end of the year. So it will be interesting to follow all the narrative. Amanda, before we wrap this up, where can people find you?
Serotonin.co. Check out Serotonin and everything we do. Follow me on Twitter, Amanda Cassatt, CASSATT, 2 S's and 2 T's, and then Serotonin_HQ on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you probably now in a year from now to see exactly how things have evolved in 2024. Thank you so much for your time again, and I'll speak to you soon.
Fabulous. Looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening to our Out of Ordinary podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to hear more content like this, then open up the podcast app and click on the follow or subscribe button. It takes less than 5 seconds and is the single best thing you can do to support the show and stay up to date to more marketing strategies that are being used in the Web3 space.